Merlin Sports.
Hey everyone, this is Fenomena from Merlin Sports, and joining me today to talk NFL divisional playoffs is DDawg. DDawg, how are you today?
Hey man, what's going on? I'm good. I'm just recovering from the wild card weekend. It was a great weekend of football, some surprises, but some really good weekend of football.
Yeah, I agree. I think I still haven't fully recovered, but we're gonna try. And with that, we're gonna try to look ahead to the divisional round and see what matchups we got and who we like in each matchup. So we will start with the games on Saturday. And the first game up, we have Houston Texans taking on Baltimore Ravens. So that's the early game. The early game, by early, I mean 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And Texans coming off a pretty huge victory over Cleveland in the wild card round, and now they head into Baltimore. Baltimore coming off a bye week, should be well rested, and this is an interesting matchup. So, what are your thoughts on the matchup, and who do you like coming out of it?
It's gonna be an interesting matchup because you got the Texans. They're riding high right now. Their rookie coach, quarterback, really surprised a lot of people last week. But going on the road is a little bit tougher. They're playing with house money right now. I like the Baltimore Ravens in this game, though. I mean, they are the number one seed. And John Harbaugh just watched his brother win a national championship in Michigan. So, he doesn't want to go to the dinner table and not have to talk about the national championship. So he's pretty motivated and fired up. Baltimore's been the best team all year. The last memorable game, they went into San Francisco and beat up San Francisco, who was flying high at the time. But Houston's going to give them some challenges. C.J. Stroud has really impressed me. I knew he was a good quarterback. I knew as much as he is from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I'm not a Buckeyes fan. But he was pinpoint accuracy when he was at Ohio State. He's maintained that. The game is faster for him, but he's still calm. He's making plays, and he looked very confident last weekend. However, going on the road, it's a little different. When you're home, your crowd's behind you. You can make plays and feel comfortable. Being on the road, it's going to be more about how well the defense performs. As you saw, the Cleveland defense struggled against Houston. Also helped that Joe Flacco showed up finally after a few weeks of really good.
He turned back into a pumpkin. That's for sure.
So, I like Baltimore this game. I think Baltimore have a good versatile offense. Their defense will be good enough to control the Texans. The Texans are going to need some explosive plays to stay in this game. Not that they can make them. Nico Collins has shown that he can really make some explosive plays on the outside, but I think Baltimore can control them enough. Control the clock, make it more of a grind-out game. That's what Baltimore does. They're a physical football team. I always say when you play Baltimore and Pittsburgh, those two teams really beat you up. So the next week you're feeling it. So it's going to be like I said, I think it'll be a good game at least for the first half. We'll see how the Texans, if they can compose themselves early in the game when their first road experience, they might have a chance to stay in this game and give Baltimore a run. But I just think Baltimore's got too many things for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, no, that's interesting. I think the Ravens, I hope that Harbaugh paid close attention to that Dallas-Green Bay game, because coming out as a heavy favorite, and if you're not fully prepared in these NFL playoffs, and the other team gets out on the jump, it really snowballed, as we saw by that game. I think Baltimore should take heed of that, because Texans are game. They're very competitive. They're good on both sides of the ball. We saw their defense. Well, not only was their offense clicking last week, but their defense was opportunistic with those turnovers. So I think Baltimore needs to be careful about forcing the play too much. What I think is something new that Houston's going to face. Like you said, they're taken to the road, but not only are they taking the road, I mean, they'll be playing outdoors in what should be a cold day coming up, right? So they'll be playing outdoors. Elements will probably factor in. Ravens will be well rested, and taking that Dallas game as a reminder not to take your opponent lightly. So I too like the Ravens. I don't foresee a blowout. I think Texans will probably stay in the game somewhat, and then as we saw in the regular season, but before Baltimore blew out San Francisco and kind of really got into form late in the season. In the middle and in the season, they kind of like took their foot off the gas a little bit late in the games and allowed teams to come back in the game. So I think if they go with their late season play and philosophy is like keep the pedal down, don't allow Houston to stick around, because if Houston is allowed to stick around, I mean, CJ Stroud can make some plays. They could stay in it. But I do like the Ravens. Yeah, I think their defense will be more successful than Cleveland's defense was. I mean, Cleveland, as much as their defense had a good regular season, and we know that they struggled a bit on the road, but I thought that it would be more of a game. I mean, it was a game up until halftime. Like, it was a back and forth game. They just imploded in the third quarter, and that was it. So
yeah, I agree with you there in terms of what happened in Houston and Cleveland. I mean, but I think the difference there is going to be you don't want to get Lamar Jackson out of the pocket and scramble. That's where I think he does his most damage. Whereas Flacco, you sort of if you pressure him, he's not scrambling anywhere. So that's the extra element that they'll have there. And I also agree that Baltimore is going to be laser focused. They're not going to mix around like Dallas did. This is a different type of team. They've been there before. Lamar hasn't been there before, but the coaching staff and the coach, he knows what it takes to get his team to a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl winning coach, so they're much more laser focused than I think Dallas was. And they're not going to panic if they get behind, but I think they want to make it a grind. This game is going to be more grinding. They don't want to make it attractive because I think that favors Houston.
Okay, so we're both siding with Baltimore in this one. Let's move on to the next Saturday matchup, which is the 8 o'clock game, and we have Green Bay Packers heading into San Fran to take on another well-rested team, the 49ers, who the number one, I guess Saturday, both number one seeds make their debuts. So Green Bay at San Francisco, how do you see this matchup shaping up?
This is a very interesting game because on the one hand, you have a team like San Francisco, which started off the season really, really well. They ran into some trouble in the middle of the season, had their bye week, and then righted the ship. The last major game they played, obviously, was against Baltimore that they didn't really show themselves too well. They've had some injuries. With the rest, hopefully everybody's available to play. I think they should be available to play. McCaffrey, Samuel, Kittle. So that's key for San Francisco, that their skill positions, on the offensive side of the ball are available for them. If they are and they can play a full game, I like the 49ers to win it. But Green Bay's red hot, man. And sometimes when you're red hot and the snowball goes, and I think it's happened with them against Dallas. They came out, they went on the field on the first possession, scored. They got a bit lucky on that on the penalty they called, which kind of kept the drive alive for them. And then they were able to put it in the end zone. And from there on, it was a snowball effect against Dallas. I don't think that's going to happen against San Francisco. San Francisco is a very disciplined team. They're not a team that likes to make mistakes. And they're not a team that they don't get flustered by pressure. They've been to a Super Bowl. They came close to going to Super Bowl last year. think if they had Purdy, they might have been able to beat Philadelphia and get to the Super Bowl. So they have, they do have some really good talent. So they obviously I think they're the favorites going in, and if everything plays out and they play their best game and Green Bay plays their best game, San Francisco beats them. I like San Francisco, but I wouldn't be surprised if an upset. Because, like I said, Green Bay's red hot. It's a snowball effect. You'll see it in our Sunday, one of our Sunday games about being red hot. But they've come in on a blast. They've been playing playoff football probably for the last 4 to 5 weeks, versus San Francisco has been coasting for the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I also like San Francisco, and in this matchup, I see San Francisco at full strength. I think is almost unstoppable. And you mentioned how in the middle of the season they did go through their down period, and it coincided with directly to the health of the team, as when a couple of key starters came out of their lineup. And one guy you didn't mention was the offensive lineman Williams too, who offers that extra protection and makes the running game stronger as well. He was also missing during that period where their play slipped. But I think a fully tooled San Francisco is going to be hard to stop, especially seeing what Green Bay was able to do to Dallas, and Dallas just looking stunned like a deer in the headlights. I do not think San Francisco is going to be stunned or be taken by surprise. I also think San Francisco would have beaten Philly last year in the conference championships had it not been for the quarterbacks going down. They were right there, and I thought they had a good chance to win that game. So I think a fully healthy San Francisco. Green Bay's a good story. Youngest team in the league. We're finally seeing the full potential of Jordan Love and what Green Bay saw in him to draft him and kind of upset the apple cart with Rodgers when Rodgers was still with Green Bay. He kind of took that personal and wanted the team to draft the other skill positions to help him still at quarterback. And there was a lot of chatter about drafting Jordan Love, but now we kind of see the fruits of that plan, and also Green Bay being patient as well. Like we see so many teams so anxious to put their rookie quarterback into action. I mean, it's kind of like, I know we were talking offline, but the game's kind of changing in that teams are pushing their rookie quarterbacks into action just to maximize that 3-year rookie quarterback window where you don't have to pay them a ton of money, and you want them to be successful so that you can spend elsewhere. And Green Bay's kind of done it differently, drafting this guy, let him sit behind Rodgers, similar to how Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. So,
yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, it's like turning, their patience. It's kind of anti-pattern for what we see in the modern NFL. But, I mean, a team like Houston, they made the right decision pushing Stroud into action right away, as we've seen how good he's been. But, how many times do you strike gold like the first year, right, with a quarterback?
I mean, you could, it's a hit and miss. I mean, and it doesn't matter where you draft them, right? I mean, Brock Purdy is a 6th-round pick, right? So it's not
Brock
like
Purdy's 6th-round pick, and then Lamar Jackson was the last pick taken in the 1st round when he was drafted as well. Yeah. So all those teams passed on him except Baltimore.
Right.
So you were absolutely right. Where draft position doesn't equate success at the quarterback position.
No, because if you look at our Sunday games are coming up, you'll see 2 guys who are drafted fairly high, and they're on their 2nd team. Some of them are on their 3rd team. So, the position. College the NFL is hard to kind of project. And I do think when you're talking about what Green Bay's done, they've been very smart about how they've groomed their quarterbacks. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers from Favre to Rodgers. It's very similar. I think when Favre was a quarterback and they wanted to push Rodgers forward, there was a lot of animosity there as well. But yeah, Jordan Love has done great. It took him some time to get his feet wet this season, but he's starting to coming on of late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is where the feel good story ends for Green Bay. I'll put it to you this way. I think there's a greater risk that Houston upsets Baltimore than Green Bay upsetting San Fran. In my opinion, I think you feel the opposite. But hey, that's why we have a good discussion about it.
Yeah, I Green Bay going to San Francisco, they're going to play in good weather. Bad weather wouldn't bother them. Whereas you mentioned it already, Houston going outdoors, so they have climate control to outdoors. Houston's is very nice weather. Hey, Baltimore could be red and rainy, or wet and rainy, so you don't know. I didn't look ahead to when's the weatherman, and they don't know they can't predict the weather anyways. But yeah, I do think if there's going to be an upset, I don't think it's going to be Baltimore. It's going to be Houston over Baltimore. I think it would be Green Bay over San Fran. But I like both number one seed. I like both number one seeds. If you have me put my money down and bet and lay points, I'm laying the points with the number one seed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that does Saturday. Let's move on to Sunday. And Sunday we have two great matchups. So we'll start with the early matchup, which takes place at 3:00 Eastern Time. And that pits the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into Detroit to face the Lions. So this should be a great, interesting matchup and a fresh matchup that, man, we can't even. It's been since the early '90s since we've seen Detroit make it to the second round. So
yeah, I don't. I mean, I can't even recall like Detroit and Tampa Bay being good teams at the same time. Literally, I mean, Detroit was fairly good in the early '90s when they had Barry Sanders. They had a few good feel-good seasons with Wayne Fontes, but
they didn't really have. It didn't equate in the playoffs, but I hear you having, some good regular seasons.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay was garbage beers until Tony Dungy got there. I think it was the late '90s, but in around that time, early 2000s, late '90s. When
I think
they started to get good.
Brad Johnson was the quarterback, and that was when the team became respectable.
Yeah. So, but this match is going to be interesting, man, because I don't think if you ask people at the beginning of this season, Detroit was definitely high on everybody's radar, and I think Dan Campbell is an exceptional coach. He may not be the best X and O's guys, but he's got some good X and O's. But he is a hell of a motivator. He's built a great culture in Detroit. The team believes in themselves. He's got full confidence in his quarterback. And I think for a guy like Jared Goff, he needed that, a guy to really back him and trust him. We know Detroit can score points. Amar St. Brown has been fantastic this season, but they got a really versatile offense. Their offense has got quite a few weapons, and they surprise you. Laporta is a fantastic tight end.
I was just going to mention him, Sam Laporta. I mean, what a fantastic rookie season.
Yeah,
and it kind of they moved off of Hawkinson last year, traded him to Minnesota, that division rival. So they kind of it turned out to be a good move, but who knew Laporta was going to be this good?
Well, he was a really good tight end at Iowa. I mean, if you watch Big Ten football and the Iowa Hawkeyes, they don't have much of an off. They don't the Iowa Hawkeyes offense for the last few years have been absolutely awful. But Sam Laporta was always the guy if they needed to make a big play and or make a play or have a first down or something. He was the guy that they had to get the ball to. He was their weapon, probably their only weapon at times. And so it's not a surprise he's having a great year. Tight ends, it's funny you mentioned the quarterbacks and how they might be a little bit of a sort of a turning point for them in terms of the high paid, because don't want to pay them, as you saw with Justin Fields is one guy that's coming up with how much they're going to pay him. Lamar, they took a long time to recognize his worth. I know Tua's going to be under a microscope for his contract, but tight end is one of those positions that is so invaluable to a quarterback, right? And you look at these teams that are playing now. Detroit has a really good tight end. Baltimore has a great tight end, right? In Andrews, Kansas City with Kelsey, San Francisco with Kittle. You've got some really good tight ends in there, and they're a great safety blanket for a quarterback. Right?
Well,
as much as the running back is out in the flat pass as a safe pass, hitting the tight end in the middle of the field is also a safe pass usually for them because they're big and they can box out. So in this game, I like Detroit, actually. We haven't really talked about who I think is going to win. I like Detroit. I think Tampa Bay has come a long way, but I think they played in a division that was really good to begin with. Detroit's played in a fairly tough division this season. Not the greatest, but tough enough to get them prepared for this. They're at home, indoors, and I trust Jared Goff more than I trust Baker Mayfield. And Detroit's defense came up strong last week. I mean, they were motivated to play against Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford's a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield is. But I mean, Baker's had a good year, but he's on his third team, right? And Jared's on his second team. And I think he proved a lot last week, beating the Rams, who thought he couldn't get into a Super Bowl title, so they traded him away from Matthew Stafford. I think it's worked out for both teams, but I like Detroit in this game. I'm not picking Detroit to a Super Bowl, but I think I like him to go to the conference finals.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting pick. You make some good points. I too am backing Detroit in this game, and despite Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay just shredding Philly's defense, I mean, I couldn't believe what I saw, like the tackling or the lack of tackling. I mean, I can't remember when I've seen such a poor defensive performance from such a, like 1 year ago, such a vaunted defense. I haven't seen that kind of drop off. I mean, that was pretty drastic. I think we've seen some peewee teams tackle better than what we saw Philly tackle. It was really bad to see, just from like football wise. Like take the teams out of it, just from football wise, it was like really poor to see. So I do not think Tampa Bay is going to be able to have the same level of success. They are riding high, though. They'll be confident. Baker will be confident. You know, like he's a rah guy, so he'll be full of confidence. I think Detroit will be more prepared. You know, it is also a short week for Tampa Bay. You know, as they played Monday night, so it's a bit of a short week for them. Detroit, you know, they played Sunday, so it's not like they're coming off a bye, but. You know, I think Dan Campbell we kind of liked his. He's one of the more gutsy play callers as well, so you got to have that going for him. I think Detroit is just more well-rounded. They have more weapons. They're playing at home. They can play fast. They can play defensive. They're kind of more adaptable to the game. The kind of game they can adapt the game to the ebbs and flows of the game. And we've seen that throughout the year, like whether they get into some shootouts or they win tight, low-scoring games. This has been a different Detroit we've seen this season. So I do like them to come out on top in this game.
Yeah, I laughed when you said Dan Campbell's gutsy. Dan Campbell, you can call him 4-down Dan. He gives a new meaning to 4 downs in football. He'll go for it anywhere.
It's almost he needs a clever nickname like Ron Rivera went by Riverboat Ron because he liked to risk it all as well. So
4 down Dan, baby. 4 down Dan.
Yeah, we need that to catch on because he's just shown time and time again, and I think that's why the players love him, right? Like he's a player's coach, and it shows on the field. And also off the field, if you ever see behind-the-scenes clips in the locker room and stuff, like they just love him. they love him to pieces over there. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting if you go back a few years that there was a lot of questions about hiring him, but he has shown an incredible development of a culture and confidence in his players. Right? I'm sure he's found, like, he got there. And a lot of the guys didn't have the confidence that they have now, and he's really developed that. Jared Goff is a prime example of that. He didn't have all the confidence in the world, but he believed in him and has ridden it to the number 3 seed in this season. But and they could have been the number 2 seed. Let's not forget that they got jobbed against Dallas, right? That should not be overlooked. They got jobbed against Dallas, so
yeah, definitely.
And he wants to be there. That's the other thing. I mean, Texas A&M was willing to offer him a lot of money to go to Texas A&M, and he turned it down. Right? That's his alma mater, and he turned it down. So, I don't see how Tampa wins this game. You talked about Philly, and I told you last week that I thought Philly was going in the wrong direction, and they just continue to go in the wrong direction. It is amazing how quickly they fell from a 10-1 team coming off the Super Bowl that they probably felt like they should have won, to a team that fell apart in the last half of the season.
Yeah. I mean, such a rapid decline, in season. That's I don't think that's been seen, too often, especially from that they were elite, and then to, like their losses. But it's just not only they lose, but the way they were losing is pretty remarkable. I guess there's some tough decisions ahead in Philadelphia. But anyways, so we both like the Lions, and we go from a fresh matchup, seeing two teams that we can't even remember if they've even played each other in the playoffs, to Tampa Bay and Detroit. And then we go to a more traditional matchup in the 6:30 game on Sunday, which gives us the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And these two teams, I think they meet. They're averaging meeting once a year in the regular season, but the unforgettable playoff game from 2 years ago, where the Chiefs won in overtime, and they had to actually change the overtime rule as a result of that shootout game in Kansas City at the time. So, how do you like these two perennial contenders matching up?
Well, this is an incredible game, rivalry game, obviously, and you mentioned that game a couple years ago, back and forth. I think they scored both scored 14 points, 2 touchdowns each, so 28 points in the last 3 minutes of the game, just to get to overtime. It was just some crazy stuff like that took place, and then in overtime, where Kansas City ended up winning it. It's an interesting matchup. The Bills are rolling. They got into the playoffs, and I think they're on a 7-game winning streak. Kansas City kind of, I don't want to say bumped into the playoffs or limped into the playoffs, because that's not the case. But they really weren't playing as well. But I do like Kansas City in this game. I think they're motivated, and not by how they looked or coming into the playoffs or the fact. I think they're pissed off that they lost to Buffalo a couple weeks ago in Kansas City on the offside call against the wide receiver. And that sparked a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion. And I think Kansas City, they knew they'd have to go through Buffalo again, and they circled this game. They didn't care where the game was played, because obviously they lost a couple games leading up to that, and Buffalo just got into the playoffs by beating Miami at the end of the season. So I think these guys are motivated to upset. It's going to be a tough game going into Buffalo, Orchard Park, as you saw the snow weather. But these two teams are built for cold weather and bad weather. They play outside. They play in the north. So I don't think that'll impact them. I think it's going to be a fairly up and down game. But and both quarterbacks, when they get under a little bit of pressure, sometimes turn the ball over. So I think there'll be a couple turnovers. But I think the team who commits the less turnovers obviously is going to win this game. I think there'll be at least 3 turnovers. I'm going to say Kansas City will get 2 of them, and Buffalo will get one. And I like Kansas City by a field goal, a late field goal. Mahomes brings them down the field and catches a late field goal to beat Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is a great matchup. We're in for a treat. This is to kind of end the weekend, right? The last game of the divisional. I think this game will be quite different from the one from 2 years ago, where they that shootout that ended up in overtime. I think this one will be more of will be lower scoring than that game, and reasons why are Kansas City just doesn't have the same weapons as they did during that matchup. Although, we were talking about their lack of receivers heading into last week's matchup, and that Rice guy just exploded. He just went off. So Mahomes was able to find his receiver that was on that day. So the thing is, and whenever people discount Mahomes and Andy Reid, they always seem to find a way, and that's kind of been in the DNA of the Kansas City Chiefs since Andy Reid and Mahomes was promoted to starter. They're just like, you can never count them out. And I like this matchup, and I think this will be fun. Sit back and watch. I think it's going to come down to a field goal. Exactly what you said. It's going to come down to a fourth quarter field goal with under a minute to play to win this game. I've been back and forth in my head which team is going to win this game, but ultimately I'm landing on the Kansas City Chiefs to go into Buffalo and to take care of business. And also in that is that Buffalo sustained some injuries on defense this week, and I think Andy Reid and Mahomes will try to take advantage of that. The other thing is that, I mean, you look at that game, Buffalo against Pittsburgh, right? They got out to an early lead, and Pittsburgh came back, got as close as to within a touchdown. So I think as much of a heater that Buffalo's been on, winning the last 7 games in a row, I mean, there has been interspersed some moments where Buffalo just didn't play well the entire time, and I think a team like Kansas City, with their experience and they just know how to win, I think they'll be able to exploit those lapses in Buffalo's games. And then, like you said, these are 2 cold weather teams playing outside. You're comfortable in these elements. It's not like you have a Miami coming in where they just look like they just didn't want to be there last week in Kansas City. They wanted no part of that cold as much as they tried to put on a brave face. I think it was masterful how Kansas City came out, and like the first drive usually is scripted. The team knows exactly what they're going to do when they get the ball, and it was just Andy Reid was just on point with their play calling in that first drive. So I just see them outlasting Buffalo and kicking that field goal to pull away in the end. But I think we're in for a great game.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing there. I think it's gonna be a tight game. Yeah, this isn't Miami going in there. I always find it funny and it's interesting. If you listen to some of the kids who want to go and they go to college in the South because it's nice and warm weather. But when it comes to NFL, there is no choice. You go wherever, and if you play in warm weather, at some point in time in the season or in your career, you're going to have to play in the cold weather and deal with the rough elements of it. And that was Tua last week. He'd never played in anything like that before in his life, I'm pretty sure. He's from Hawaii, and it was very rough sledding last week for him and his entire Miami Dolphins team. This won't be a problem for either Buffalo or Kansas City this week. But yeah, and I think we should point out that Kansas City's defense is really good, right? You're right. It's not the same Kansas City team. Their defense is really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking it's not going to be a shootout that we've come to expect from these two teams over the years. I think this one will be more tactical and more locked down on defense. I think they'll put a spy on Josh Allen, and I don't think he's gonna, gallop as much as he did. He won't be allowed to gallop as much as he was against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was missing T.J. Watt. I think it really affected them, and then things kind of snowballed. Well, pardon the pun, because there was a lot of snow in that stadium. But
yeah, well, what's Buffalo without snow, man?
Yeah, well, it's usually good to put out the fires.
Yeah, you don't miss a few. You can't have a day in Buffalo without a few fires, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll be in for a barn burner of a game, that's for sure. So, so we'll put up our picks in a second here. A summary of our divisional round picks. And, let's play some football. We'll be back next week to break down the conference championship. I can't believe we're almost here. So looking forward to that, and thank you, my friend, for joining us once again.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to a couple more days before we get into some nice football again, and enjoy the live playoff action, and a little bit refreshing because there's new teams.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, cheers, my